Wall Street closed lower Thursday as hopes for fresh fiscal stimulus ahead of President Joe Biden's pandemic aid proposal were pitted against a weakening labor market. GameStop's interstellar rise has seemingly been fueled by bullish posts on Reddit as opposed to any fundamental changes in the company's finances or prospects. The saga has sparked calls for regulatory scrutiny. General Motors said Thursday it was setting a goal to sell all its new cars, SUV, and light pickup trucks with zero tailpipe emissions by 2035, a dramatic shift by the largest U.S. automaker away from gasoline and diesel engines. These and more on TFT News. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is TFT News. Facebook's oversight board ruled on Thursday that the social media company was wrong to remove 4 of 5 pieces of content the board reviewed, including posts Facebook took down for violating rules on hate speech and harmful COVID-19 misinformation.
Facebook's oversight board announced decisions Thursday on its first-ever cases, ruling that the social media company was wrong to remove 4 of 5 pieces of content the board reviewed. The initial cases included posts Facebook took down for violating rules on hate speech and COVID-19 misinformation. Facebook now has 7 days to restore the pieces of content that the board ruled should not have been taken down. The rulings are a crucial test of the independence of the 20-member board, created by Facebook in response to long-standing criticism of the way it treats problematic content, particularly its failings in policing hate speech and misinformation. The board has been in the spotlight since the company last week asked it to rule on the recent suspension of former President Donald Trump from both Facebook and Instagram. The board said the case would be opened for public comment on Friday. Facebook blocked Trump's access to his Facebook and Instagram accounts over concerns of further violent unrest following the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. The board is expected to announce one more case from its first batch and called for Facebook to be clearer about its rules, issuing 9 non-binding policy recommendations. Facebook doesn't have to act on these recommendations, but it does have to publicly respond within 30 days.
Wall Street closed lower Thursday as hopes for fresh fiscal stimulus ahead of President Joe Biden's pandemic aid proposal were pitted against a weakening labor market.
Stocks on Wall Street rebounded Thursday following a string of strong earnings reports from companies like Apple and Comcast. Also lifting investor sentiment, trading platforms restricted transactions in several heavily shorted stocks, easing fears about a ripple effect to the broader market, and more measures could follow. Invesco U.S. Value Equities Chief Investment Officer Kevin Holt.
Seems like regulators are stepping in, trying to get some control over this. So hopefully things calm down over the next week or so.
Shares in red-hot AMC fell by more than half and GameStop 44% after some online brokerages curbed trading of those stocks. That capped a spectacular rise in recent days, sparked by a social media-driven frenzy. American Airlines, a heavily shorted stock, initially joined the fray and shot up more than 30% at the market open, but settled for a 9% rise as Robinhood restricted trading. The carrier reported earnings that beat analysts' expectations, but investors said those were not enough to justify the stock's big advance. The Dow and S&P 500 ended the day with a gain of almost 1%. The Nasdaq added 0.5%.
Apple Chief Executive Officer Tim Cook on Thursday criticized polarization and misinformation on social media, intensifying a conflict between the iPhone maker and Facebook.
Too many are still asking the question, how much can we get away with? When they need to be asking, what are the consequences?
Escalating a conflict between tech titans Apple and Facebook, Apple CEO Tim Cook delivered a blistering takedown of social media on Thursday, blasting apps that he argued collect too much personal information and prioritize, quote, conspiracy theories and violent incitement simply because of their high rates of engagement.
At a moment of rampant disinformation and conspiracy theories juiced by algorithms, we can no longer turn a blind eye to a theory of technology that says all engagement is good engagement. The longer the better, and all with the goal of collecting as much data as possible.
Cook's comments at the Computers, Privacy, and Data Protection Conference did not refer to Facebook by name, but the two companies have been in a high-profile dispute. Apple is preparing to implement privacy notifications that Facebook said would disrupt its ad-supported apps and warned investors on a Wednesday earnings conference call that Apple's impending privacy changes would inflict, quote, significant ad targeting headwinds in 2021. And Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg accused Apple of using its dominant platform position to, quote, interfere with how our apps and other apps work. In his remarks Thursday, Cook also took aim at social media practices that he said undermine public trust in vaccines and encourage users to join extremist groups.
It is long past time to stop pretending that this approach doesn't come with a cost of polarization, of lost trust, and yes, of violence. A social dilemma cannot be allowed to become a social catastrophe.
In response to Cook's remarks, Facebook said in a statement that it believes, quote, Apple is behaving anti-competitively by using their control of the App Store to benefit their bottom line at the expense of app developers and small businesses.
GameStop's interstellar rise has seemingly been fueled by bullish posts on Reddit, as opposed to any fundamental changes in the company's finances or prospects. The saga has sparked calls for regulatory scrutiny.
It may have been long dismissed as dumb money, but the GameStop saga has shown how retail investors can make stocks move in ways that defy logic. Shares of the video game retailer surged nearly 700% over the past week, after a group of so-called Reddit bros took on hedge fund pros. As such, the stock's interstellar surge has sparked calls for regulatory scrutiny. Danilo Kawasaki is the co-founder of investment firm Gerber Kawasaki.
I think that regulators need to step in and figure out how to regulate this a little better. Ganging up on a short squeeze to make a quick profit, it's not really what capital markets are for.
US law bars the spread of false or misleading information designed to manipulate investors into buying or selling securities, like that seen during the rash of pump and dump schemes during the early 2000s .com boom. Regulators are likely to explore whether Reddit was used in a similar way. Jeff Tomasulo is the CEO of Vespula Capital.
Very reminiscent of 1999 and the .com era, because does GameStop really have a valuation of $160 a share per stock, or $100? Absolutely not. But, there are people out there that are trading and speculating, and, that's why they're pushing these stocks up higher. And I don't even call it investing. It's really kind of speculating in these type of stocks.
The US Securities and Exchange Commission said it was aware of the market volatility and was assessing the situation. Experts say the agency will likely look at whether the messaging was manipulative by both investors holding the stock long term and activists betting against it. Wild swings in GameStop's shares led the New York Stock Exchange to halt trading in the company several times. Lawyers say there was sufficient confusion to warrant a longer suspension. It could prompt a broader review of share suspension rules. The GameStop incident has also shone a spotlight on low-cost retail trading platforms. Nowadays, anyone with a smartphone can trade stocks for free, prompting millions of ordinary Americans to dabble in investing. There are consumer protection concerns that many do not properly understand the risks. Analysts warn chatroom chatter is fueling huge and irrational share price moves, raising concerns of it upending the market if not properly policed.
Shares in American Airlines groups surged more than 30% in opening trading after the carrier was mentioned on Reddit's Wall Street Bets forum, broadening a battle between small-time traders and major Wall Street funds that has shaken U.S. and European stock markets.
Shares in American Airlines surged more than 30% in opening trading Thursday after the carrier was mentioned on Reddit's Wall Street Bets forum, and it posted a slimmer-than-expected quarterly loss. American stock has joined the ranks of GameStop, BlackBerry, and AMC, whose shares have seen dramatic jumps as retail investors have piled into heavily shorted stocks, igniting a battle between small-time traders and major Wall Street institutions that has shaken U.S. and European stock markets. American Airlines was named on Reddit's Wall Street Bets thread Thursday. That's the forum where chats among bullish individual traders have fueled rallies, pitting them against professional traders who bet that those shares will drop. American is the most heavily shorted airline stock, according to data from research firm S3. The exaggerated price moves of shorted stocks are drawing more calls for regulatory scrutiny. Gerber Kawasaki Chief Operating Officer Danilo Kawasaki.
I'm not a big fan of short sellers, but they go out, they do their research, and then they get taken out by a gang of retail investors trying to make a quick buck. I think regulators need to step in.
Shares of U.S. airlines have gained ground since November, but have come under renewed pressure earlier this week. The pack of retail traders, some of them former bankers working for themselves, has become an increasingly powerful force. UBS data shows they accounted for a fifth of equity orders last year.
General Motors said Thursday it was setting a goal to sell all its new cars, SUV, and light pickup trucks with zero tailpipe emissions by 2035, a dramatic shift by the largest U.S. automaker away from gasoline and diesel engines.
In a dramatic shift, the largest U.S. automaker Thursday set an ambitious public goal to end the sale of gasoline and diesel-powered cars, SUVs, and light-duty trucks by the year 2035. General Motors also pledged to become carbon neutral by 2040. The news comes just over a week after President Joe Biden took office, promising to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and replace hundreds of thousands of government vehicles with electric models.
All-electric vehicle future.
GM Chief Executive Mary Barra has aggressively pushed the company to embrace electric vehicles, saying in a statement the automaker had worked with the Environmental Defense Fund to, quote, develop a shared vision of an all-electric future.
Making our EV future something people race toward.
GM has a long way to go. It sold 2.5 million vehicles in the United States last year, only about 20,000 of which were EVs. But GM said in November it was investing $27 billion in electric and autonomous vehicles over the next 5 years, up from $20 billion in earlier plans. GM shares surged on the news as much as 7%, but gave back some of those gains by day's end.
And those are the latest from around the world. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is TFT News.